Today I am joined by Grace Kinirons, who is going to share the story of her stage career to date. From her school days in Mullingar, to her years on the West End, to her creative life these days, Grace will share her insights into the life of a musical theatre performer. I want to start by talking about the first time we met.
Oh my God.
We were standing in a queue to audition for Malahide Musical Society's Sweeney Todd.
We were.
And I remember meeting this very lovely lady in the queue. And I asked her about herself. And I asked her about her experience. And she said, I haven't been in Malahide Musical Society since 1970 something or 1980 something. I remember at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, bless. Well, good luck to you. I hope it goes well for you, thinking you wouldn't have a hope, considering you hadn't been on stage for over 30 years, or so I thought.
Oh dear.
And I think that points to your humility and your modesty and the fact that you never sell yourself. You're probably terribly uncomfortable talking about yourself here today.
Yes.
But nonetheless, there was so much story behind that woman, so much that woman had done that she didn't tell me in that audition, led me to believe that she was a poor, innocent little crater who was not going to...
Absolutely. Yes, that was me.
Not at all. You left out a substantial chunk of what you had done before that time that we met in that queue.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear all about it. And we might start by going right back.
Okay.
It's Mullingar. You were one of
7.
back in the 70s and the 80s.
And the 60s.
And the 60s.
One was born in the mid-60s. Very different time, Kieran.
Very different time. Tell me how you got to become the person who will eventually go to London and have a career in the West End.
It's hard to put it into words. All I know is, as long as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was to be on the stage. And that sounds like such a cliche, okay? Because you're growing up in a small town, which Mullingar was at the time, in the 60s. Nobody in your family had ever been in show business or anything to do with show business. But I was a very imaginative child, and hard to believe I was actually incredibly shy. I learned to hide that. I'm still actually quite shy. My family were noisy. I had 4 brothers, lots of sport, lots of killing each other in the house or whatever. And I used to escape off up into my mother's bedroom and dress up and use her best lipstick and make up my own little shows and hide from everybody else. And my mother's dream had been to be a ballet dancer.
Oh.
Yes, but of course she was born in Ireland in the 1930s. In 1936 she was born, and you didn't be a ballet dancer, simple as that. Okay. She was actually a champion Irish dancer, but she had promised that if she ever had little girls, she would send them to ballet. Now, we have to picture, Mullingar in the middle of Ireland, no ballet teachers for a start. But I think when I was about maybe 6 or 7, we had a visiting ballet teacher came down, and she signed us up, and I started ballet lessons. So, and I just loved it.
And that was when you were 6 or 7?
Yeah.
Okay, and so that really proved to you that this is something that you really love.
I just loved the ability to lose myself and to listen to the music and follow the music and dance, and I felt free, and I felt, all of those things. But the problem was then that teacher would leave. They might come for 1 term, and then you'd never see somebody for 2 years. But in my head, I'd still practice everything at home. So there was no stage schools, there was nothing, nowhere for children to go to learn. But it was all in my head, and then it was through school, because schools back then were so good. You had fabulous teachers, who were so encouraging of learning how to play an instrument or putting on little shows and things like that. But all through my school years, I from being little right up until I was 15, I never wanted to stand out. I wanted to hide in the background. If there was school plays, anything like that, didn't want to be a part. I would actually opt out completely.
Because of your own personality and your own shyness?
Yeah. I didn't want to be the centre of attention. I didn't want people to look at me. It was all going on inside me, but I just didn't have the confidence or the courage or whatever it took you know. But that changed when I got to maybe 15 or 16. Not so much me, but people around me who began to see, oh, you have a really good singing voice, or these kind of things, and pushing me to be in a choir or whatever. That's kind of where it started. And then when I was 16, there's a fabulous music college in Mullingar called St. Finian's College, and they were putting on a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, which they always did every year. And they asked the girls from Loreto College to play the female roles, as opposed to the young boys who used to play the female roles before their voices broke. So I was asked to audition, and I got the lead juvenile role of Josephine. So the priest who directed was musical director, Father Frank McNamara, who since passed away, knew Veronica Dunn at the College of Music and got me an audition. And in my Leaving Cert year, there was it. I was going to the College of Music.
So did you do your Leaving Cert?
I did do my Leaving Cert, but my head was in the clouds, as you can imagine, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be an opera singer. That's all I could think of while I should have been studying Irish history. But no, I still did okay in the Leaving Cert. But this September, my parents dropped me off at Chatham Row in Dublin into the College of Music and drove away. That was it.
For you to live in Dublin and study music in Dublin?
Yeah.
Up from the country, 17 years of age.
As green and as innocent and I mean really naive.
Excited?
But incredibly excited. And when I look back then, you can see that there was a determination even then, because I had, I found secondary school quite difficult. I think I was a very imaginative person and I lived in my own little world. And I got bullied a lot because the music teachers liked me and, would be saying, oh, she's got a beautiful voice. And then everybody, at school then would say, oh, you think you're great or whatever. And I think that did influence me as I got older, this terror of standing out and being punished for it. So when I started the College of Music, it was the biggest relief of my life to realise I wasn't an oddball, that there were other people out there like me who loved musicals, who loved dancing, who loved singing. It was the most incredible feeling to be around people who were interested in the same thing and who actually, the sense of belonging was overwhelming at that time.
Wow, that's powerful. And talk to me about your training then there.
So I was actually training as a classical singer, because even in Ireland back then, there wasn't really much of a musical theatre scene, really. We were still, I suppose, in Ireland in that time of the Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, My Fair Lady, where, it was still that classical sound rather than a musical theatre sound. So, I was trained classically. I had a wonderful teacher called Deirdre Greer Delaney, and I would have been studying lieder and French song and bel canto, and I studied piano, I studied music theory, totally classical music, and I was aiming to be an opera singer. Hard to believe, and I then took myself off to Diggs Lane. They had dance classes, so I started dancing again. So really from being a young child, I had no dance training at all, and started, going to dance classes. And then in my second year at the College of Music, we got a drama teacher called Miriam O'Mara, and that was the first time anything like acting suddenly became important.
Tell me about that, acting becoming important, because you are now an incredible actress. But your background, you started out as a musician and a singer.
And a singer. I remember the first time meeting Miriam O'Mara, and I was so in awe of her. She was like this exotic creature. She was very slim and she had this long blonde hair, and she smoked, I think they were called Moores thin cigarettes. She had these long fingers and painted fingernails, and she'd sit and smoke and look at you. I was so intimidated by her. But she was the first person who started to talk about, why were you doing what you were doing on stage? What was it about? Yeah, you're making a beautiful sound, but what does that mean? You're all singers. What are you singing about? And I started, I never thought about it like this. And I just found that all fascinating. So she started that journey of, why and what's the role about and what are you trying to achieve and why is your character doing this? That sort of, those thoughts. I never really thought about it. But so I found that incredible. And she was probably one of the first people who influenced me in terms of then starting to look at films and go to plays. And we also started putting on plays. It wasn't just about putting on operas. We actually put on straight plays as well. So yeah, which
so
I found
a very rounded
very rounded
training experience. And
Absolutely.
for musical theatre, really,
Yeah.
the singing and the acting both
Exactly.
equally important.
Exactly.
Tell me about how you supported yourself. Was there a scholarship or was there?
Well, yes, that's funny. Okay, I think Father McNamara, as far as I know, paid my fees for the first term.
Okay.
And then there was a big exam at the end of the first term, and I won what was called the Young Student of the Year, even though I'd only been there since September. And that got all of my fees paid for the next year. I was actually living in a hostel with nuns. I know that's hard to believe now, but in Mount Street, because that's what you did when you come up from the country. You lived, your parents were like, oh yeah, going in there, don't trust you to be out on your own. So I lived in a hostel and my parents had to pay a weekly fee for that, which would have cost them money because they had 7 kids and only my dad worked. Then when I was 18, and lucky enough, the people involved in this story are no longer on this planet, so they can't be brought to prison for this.
Okay.
I was hauled into Veronica Dunn, who was the head of the department, and she said, now, Grace, you're 18, I hear, and you're going to go down to Townsend Street with Andy Murphy here to collect your Arts Council grant. Oh, that's great. Right, off I go down to Townsend Street, Dole office, to sign on. And so we were all, she had said, you're not getting any, because at that point, the College of Music was trying to get recognised as a third level. It is now, of course, DIT, Dublin Institute of Technology, but then it wasn't. So she said, but you're all full-time musicians, you're all full-time students, you should be entitled to a grant. So we all went off and signed on and we got 19 Irish pounds a week.
From the Dole office.
From the Dole office. Don't tell that to anybody.
We might have to cut that out. We're going to check with our lawyers. You may owe the state some money.
Exactly.
We don't know. And tell me then, you were then asked, weren't you, to be in Malahide Musical Society? Is that the next step?
You'd hear through the grapevine that such and such a society were looking for somebody, or wanted people to audition for something, or that's kind of what was going on. So I can't fully remember whether I actually auditioned or whether I just got it, but I did Oklahoma with Malahide Musical Society, and I got paid to do it. I got paid per performance to do it. I know, hard to believe. But yeah, so I played Laurie in Oklahoma for Malahide Musical Society in Scollisa.
Wow. And that was where then I met you all those years later and you pointed to that performance.
Absolutely.
You didn't tell me you were paid and you didn't tell me that anything else happened after that.
No.
I thought that was the last time you threaded the boards.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't, no.
So tell us what happened after the College of Music.
So I was still at the College of Music when, again, I was there when I shouldn't have been there. And that's where kind of you wonder about serendipity or fate or whatever. It was the Easter holidays and normally I would have gone home, but I was singing at a big Easter ceremony. I think it was in one of the big cathedrals there in Dublin. And so I was practicing what I was going to be singing for the Easter Sunday Mass. And one of the lads came in to say, I overheard him in the corridor, that they were putting on a production of HMS Pinafore at the Gaiety Theatre that summer and they were holding auditions. And I kind of popped my head out the door and I was like, oh, I know HMS Pinafore, of course, having done it at school. So I said, oh, what happened? He said, oh, yeah, they're auditioning and some of us are going down. So I said, oh, I'll go down with yous. And here I am literally in an old pair of jeans and a sweatshirt, and no makeup because I didn't wear makeup back in those days, and just walked down with the lads and we all trooped up to the stage door and a woman called Yvette Halley was there. She was Noel Pearson's production assistant And we were like, this is at the Olympia Theatre where the auditions. And we were like, yeah, we're here to audition. And she was like, oh, grand. But she said, the boys can audition because it's the boys' day. You can't because you missed the auditions. They were yesterday. And I was like, but I know the show. And she said, well, look, I'm really sorry. And I was like, well, can I just hang around and wait? So I went in and I waited, and she took pity on me. So she let me in at the very end. I was the last person to go in and audition. I didn't have any sheet music. I didn't have anything. I just walked on stage, hello. And there was Noel Pearson and Mavis Ascot and Earl Gill and all these well-known people at the time. Of course, I hadn't a clue who anybody was. And I'm here to audition. And what are you going to sing? And I sang a song called O Men from the Field, which is kind of a classical Irish song, unaccompanied. And then Mavis Ascot came up on stage and said, can I dance? And I said, yeah. So she put me through my paces and I got in.
To be in the Gaiety?
To be in the Gaiety Theatre in HMS Pinafore with starring John Kavanagh and Anita Reeves. So, and it was a full equity contract. It was completely professional. So I left the College of Music early and started rehearsals for that. We only had 3 weeks rehearsal. The show went on. It was a huge success, and Cameron McIntosh came over to see it because Mavis Ascot had put such an incredible twist on it, and Joe Dowling was the director. And they hadn't changed any of the story or anything like that, but they had manipulated the story. And at the time in the West End, Le Cage aux Folles had just opened. There was a huge sort of a movement towards, opening up the reality of what it was to be gay and have openly gay men on stage and things like that. So in HMS Pinafore, we had the Admiral General actually falling in love with Rafe Rackstraw instead of marrying, that was the whole kind of subplot underneath it. But all the sailors were dressed in white, kick line chorus, whatever. So Cameron McIntosh thought it was hilarious and put some money into it, and off we went to the UK.
You all went over?
Had to fight to get over because I didn't have a full, I had a licence, as in I'd done my 10 weeks at the Gaiety Theatre, and we were going to be in Belfast and Manchester, but I was going to be a few weeks short of a full equity card to get into the Old Vic, because you had to have a full equity card to be in London. So there was about 4 of us who didn't have that, and we actually took Irish Equity to court and won our case because they had taken our money off us and hadn't allocated us the proper amount of weeks. So we actually won the case and we were able to go to the Old Vic in London. Old Vic, yeah. So there you go. I know. Incredible.
So out of Ireland she goes and over to London. Out of Ireland she goes
and over to London with this show that was then nominated for a Laurence Olivier Award, etc. And then the show finished in May 1986 and most of the Irish cast went home. But I stayed.
But you stayed.
I stayed.
And before you tell us what happened next, what was that experience like, you landing in London? Were you just at that age where everything was great and everything was fun and everything was positive and it was just so exciting? Or
yes, I mean, I was 20. I was very lucky because I was protected by a show and the people in it, and it was a half Irish, half English cast. So I made one friendship that I still have to this day. I mean, lots of friends, but one particular friendship, and his name is Stephen Matthews, and he is still my kind of closest friend from that time, and he is still a professional actor. But it was life changing. Kieran, is all I can say to you. Like to come from an innocent Catholic Irish background to find yourself in London in the 80s, when this is before Me Too, this is before mobile phones, this is before phoning your parents up, this is, you could completely recreate yourself. You could have turned yourself inside out and nobody would have cared, noticed, didn't matter. Wow. The freedom to come from such a, because people forget that, growing up in that Ireland, we were still very much under the I suppose influence or whatever of the Catholic Church, of the state, of all of those things, and to suddenly find yourself in this place, which was amazing. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of those homosexual overtones in that show that you mentioned in an Ireland where it hadn't been decriminalized
Absolutely.
yet. So it was
Absolutely.
really sort of avant-garde.
And to meet openly gay men for the first time. Another good friend of mine who's still, I'm very good friends with now, William. Like, William was the first gay man I met. And actually, I shared a flat with him in Drumcondra, actually, when I was doing Pinafore, and introducing him to my parents. And my parents were so accepting of him. And I remember he's knitting his jumper and, talking to my dad about cricket and things like that. And my parents were like, yeah, they knew he was gay, but they had no issue with it whatsoever. And that was huge, because my father was born in 1924. So it was so vibrant. There was so many things happening to be in a show, and the amazing things back then before health and safety, before all these rules changed. You could go backstage into any show. Like when Pinafore finished and some of the people I was in the show with went on to do other things in the West End, she'd meet them in between shows and they'd say, oh, do you fancy seeing the show? And they'd walk you through the stage door, and through the linking door that went in, they'd find you a seat somewhere, or you'd sit in the lighting box or whatever it is. You'd go backstage, all the crew. It was a real family atmosphere back then.
Okay, because I was wondering about that, about, the Irish cohort head home, you stay by yourself or with a smaller group of people, and you're finding your way in London and you're moving on to maybe something new.
So there was a real sense of loss, obviously, when people went home. And I think you can probably relate to it yourself, that very first show that you do when you're a young person, and then it comes to an end. I cried for weeks, heartbroken, and you have no job. And you have no money. And what are you going to do with yourself? But, I look back on who I was, and I'm amazed sometimes, that I stuck it out, and I did. And I found myself a job in a pub. So that's where, and of course I had worked as a pub in my teenage years in Mullingar. So it just kind of lent itself to that. And I was renting a room off a girl who'd been in the show. She had her own little 2 up, 2 down, and I had one of the rooms. And started auditioning for things, because back then, again, what was wonderful, there was a newspaper called The Stage, and you opened the back pages of The Stage and they had all the open auditions listed. You didn't have to have an agent. You just turned up and took your chance. All of that, of course, completely changed. But back then you could do that. You could just, walk up. Looking back now, the way you have sliding doors moments and you wonder, should I have gone down that road? Anita Reeves and John Kavanagh, and there was an actor called Paul Bentley. They kind of took me under their wing to a certain extent, and they used to get me to learn speeches because they knew I wanted to do it, and they actually gave me, direction and stuff. And I remember them having a big conversation with me about whether I should go to drama school.
Okay, to be maybe more what one might call a more serious actress.
Absolutely.
So they were mentoring you, and they thought
they were mentoring me. Okay. I think Paul Bentley was saying he thought I should go to drama school, and John and Anita were like, well, maybe she should try it herself first and see what happens. It wasn't they were against drama school, but they felt, look, she's in a show now, she's got her equity card, what can drama school teach her? Mm-hmm. And so I didn't, but I wonder, it still crosses my mind. I wonder if, I mightn't have got in anyway, if I had gone and I had been lucky enough to get into somewhere like RADA or, Lambda or one of those drama schools, would my career have taken a completely different path? But these are the choices,
I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know.
But a path it took nonetheless.
Yeah.
So what came next?
I went to have a chat with an agent, Kurt Gansel, and he said that I was too young to take on his books, and he said, oh, should go off and get a bit of experience there for yourself, whatever, for the next few years. And what he meant was go off and work in, repertory theatre and panto and all these kind of things. He said, because you're only 20 and you're, whatever. So I was like, I remember being a bit disappointed, but I thought, okay. Anyway, about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from him saying, Now, Grace, I happened to be at the Guildford School of Acting's final show, and I was sitting in front of a casting director called Tony Arnell. And Tony Arnell had been chatting to somebody else about the fact they were looking for this Irish girl who looked like she just got off the boat for a series called The Charmer, starring Nigel Havers and Fiona Fullerton and Rosemary Leach, which was going to be what was then London Weekends Television big autumn series. There was this character called Mary. They wanted full Irish accent and whatever, and they were finding it very hard to find a girl like that because a lot of the Irish actresses they felt were a bit too sophisticated. So of course he thought of me. So I went up to London Weekend Television. This was in the summer of 86. Had a chat with Tony Arnell and Alan Gibson, the director, and didn't ask me to read anything. We just talked about Dublin and Ireland, and they said, yeah, got the job. So,
Wow.
yeah. So there I was now in a big TV production, but hadn't a clue how big it was, or how big these stars were, or how lucky I was, or just incredible.
And it went well.
It did. Now, it didn't come out obviously till the next year because that's what happened. But it won a BAFTA. It was the biggest series at the time. Again, that innocence, I think it was something that came to me much later in life. It was about how acting is a business as well as just
An art.
And I didn't have the business bit at all. Sure, I thought everything was great and everybody was great and she was this great and chatted away, and Fiona Fullerton invited me a member to it. She was a big star at the time, beautiful woman. She had an apartment in Kensington. She invited me to a party. Sure, there was all these movers and shakers there. Sure, if I had been a more wise or sophisticated girl, I would have been working the room and whatever it is. Sure, I was just chatting away to people and didn't know who anybody was or anything.
Always that unassuming.
Just expecting everybody to be, I don't know, normal or the same as myself or whatever it was. But yeah, after that, now I went through a very tough year after that because The Charmer came to an end. It wasn't coming out till the following autumn. So the filming finished. And then I was out of work till the following summer, and I worked in the rugby club in Richmond. I got loads of temporary jobs. Actually worked for the civil service in the UK for a couple of months. How I managed that, I don't know. in the court services. That's when I became homesick. I almost came back. And I remember my 21st birthday, I was out of work, no family, no relations over there. My parents rang me up. My dad started singing happy birthday, and I remember I just bawled down the phone.
Oh.
Yeah, it was, when you're like, oh, I just want to go home. But I didn't. I stuck it out, and I was, because I knew there was nothing, I knew I didn't want to be an opera singer. I knew there was really nothing for me back there, and I had changed so much at that point. So I just had to grit it out. And lucky enough, a couple of weeks later, Noel Pearson came back into sort of my circle again, as in he was the producer of Pinafore, and he was putting on a big summer production in Sadler's Wells called Bless the Bride. Again, old-fashioned musical. And it was starring Ruth Maddock. So Ruth Maddock was Heidi High. Simon Williams was a really well-known actor for loads of TV stuff over there. Una Stubbs, she had been in loads of TV stuff over there. And it was supposed to be a tryout at Sadler's Wells to go into the West End. So we did Sadler's Wells. We got great reviews, but it never transferred. Yeah. So, and then The Charmer came out. And I had another sliding doors moment where I auditioned for the Royal Shakespeare Company to go in, like, to be a spear carrier in loads of different, little plays, which I got. And I auditioned for Les Mis, and I got. And I didn't know which one to take. And Kurt Gansel had taken me on then as a client at that point. And he said, look, take Les Mis because, it's better money, it's a great show. It pays really well. You don't know what's going to happen with the Royal Shakespeare Company. So again, that acting thing, I was on the cusp of it, but I went the other way.
So you took Les Mis.
I did. And I kind of knew I got it because when I walked on stage for the audition, Ken Caswell, who was the resident director at the time, said, oh, I saw you in The Charmer last night. which had of course come out. So I was like, oh, right. So I started as the swing, and that was it was weird because it was the huge Exodus cast change. Les Mis had opened at the RSC in 1985, had gone into the West End in 1986. So most people who had been in Les Mis from 1985 all left.
First significant
cast change. I sat in the auditorium for most of the rehearsal. I was learning as they were learning, and I was writing all my notes down and watching, this one goes over here and that one goes over there, whatever it is, and learning the harmonies and things like that, but not really engaging with the cast very much as such. And that's the way things worked back then. We then had our opening night. It was very bizarre. Of course, I wasn't on for the opening night because all the girls were on. And so we were into December, and we got to the week of Christmas. And a few people were off, colds, flus, all of this kind of thing. And I got my first opportunity to go on, as an ensemble member. So that was nerve-wracking and exciting and etc. But, I did okay. And then we get to Stephen's Day, or Boxing Day as it was called over there. And I got into the show and they were like, oh yeah, you're on for Karen. I went, Grant. Karen, I'd been on for her already. And Karen was the first cover, Cosette. So that was grand because there was the girl who's playing Cosette had been there. And at the 15-minute call, the musical director walked in, who happened to be going out with the girl playing Cosette, a lovely Irish actress called Jacinta Mulcahy, and just kind of said to the stage doorkeeper, oh yeah, Jacinta's got a sore throat, so she's not coming in. So they were like, grand, yeah, sure, the first cover's been on loads of times, we'll tell Karen. And then they looked and went, oh, Karen's not here either. Oh, who's the second cover? Me. They were like, oh shit, is that Irish one that's never even had a rehearsal, never even had anything. Whoops. And like literally there's 10 minutes the show gone up on Stevens' night, like packed. So I was hauled upstairs. They were trying to get a costume for me, a wig, etc., etc. All the stuff is going through my head because I'm thinking, now I knew the part because I'd obviously sat out and I was very studious and I knew I was the second cover, even though the chances of me going on were probably pretty slim. But I was kind of like, well, I learn her part just in case, whatever. So I actually did know her part, but I had no rehearsal, nothing. Sure. Craig Pinder was playing Jean Valjean and Graham Bickley, who was playing Marius. Sure, they'd never even met me. They didn't know who I was. And I was hauled into their dressing room. This is Grace. Oh, hello. She's Cosette. Oh, hello. And Craig Pinder was like, okay, so, well, best of luck. And hope it all goes well. And in some ways it was great because I hadn't even time to get nervous. And that was it. I was on.
And on you went.
And on I went. It was a blur. All I can say to you. But as far as I know, I did okay. As if that wasn't the end of it then, there I was the next night on, and I was on just back in the ensemble again for Act 2, and when Javert comes over the barricade and he's about to get exposed by Gavroche, and Gavroche was played by a young woman at the time, and I was standing with me gun, looking very serious, the bottom of the barricade. Javert's coming over, etc., checking that I'm in the right position, and I know I have to give him a gun over there, and right. And I looked behind me and to see that there was no Gavroche, because Gavroche is normally sitting on the barricade, waiting to kind of jump out and go, "Lawyer, good evening, dear Inspector." And I went, I had a quick look around, and there was Clive Carter, who was playing Javert, had come over and he was sitting down and he was having his chat singing through his song, and we were getting to the point of Liar. And I remember looking at one of the other guys who was standing next to me going, there's no Gavroche. Full audience out there. What? There's no Gavroche. And he went, shit. And so we got to the point where Javert finishes his what he's saying, silence, and I went, liar. Now, lucky enough, I was dressed as a boy. Good evening, dear Inspector. Lovely evening, my dear. Da, da, da. And of course, I didn't know the words. So I was going, you see this man? He's not who he says he is. And everybody's face, I remember on stage, turned around to look at me thinking, who is this girl that has completely lost her marbles? So that was the next night. So I'd gone on for Cosette, and the next night I saved the show at Gavroche. And of
And
course,
when you came off, were they happy with you, or
it was incredible because, of course, again, I didn't really know many of the cast because I was always this girl who was sort of wandering around waiting to go on for when somebody was off. And so they were like, oh, well done, shaking my hand to the wings. That was amazing. That was me. Yeah, it's not Grace. Oh, hello, Grace. So, yeah.
Wow, it shows what a true professional
Oh, well,
you
I
are.
don't know. But anyway, yeah. So they were great moments, I have to say. Those kind of, and those memories stay with you. And that was Les Mis, 18 months.
What is it like to be in a show for 18 months, day in, day out, 8 shows a week, the same thing over and over again?
Really tough. Absolutely. I realised I was not cut out for that. The creative part of me, I think if you're a very conscientious actor, if you try to bring 100% to each performance, you try to make it fresh, you try to make it new. And this is the issue with the long running shows, because when you go in, you step into, especially if you're not the first cast, if you are a takeover cast and then 5, 10, 20 years down the road, you cannot change anything. You literally have to do the track that person did, that they worked out. You step into their shoes. You try to bring maybe a slight change of interpretation if you're allowed, but a lot of the time you're not. To go in 2 shows on a Saturday, 2 shows on a Wednesday, understudy calls, recasts, rehearsals, trying to get into London, trying to get home from London, and you hear that dun 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 dun, and in the end you hate every note of it. It's just, and everybody has their way of surviving. Some people switch off, which I couldn't do. And I think you can see that when you go to see a show. You can see the actors who are just, thinking
Glazed
of the paycheck,
over.
glazed over, having a bit of a laugh up the back, and they don't realise you can see that. I wasn't one of those. I found it exhausting, and you begin to go a bit mad. You begin to kind of second guess the words before they come out of your mouth because you've said them so many times. And the weirdest thing, because everybody's got the same track, and the wardrobe people and the people who are changing the wigs and the sound guys and, the stage management, you keep meeting the same people at the same point backstage as well. So you're having the same conversations and it all begins to go, yeah, real Groundhog Day. Yeah, hard.
And you're in your 20s and you're doing something that ends up being a bit of a Groundhog Day. What was it like to have a personal life? Could you have a personal life? Did you party? Was it quite monotonous?
It's a bit of both. So I think because London's so expensive, most people can't afford to live in central London. So everybody's living a bit further out. So you have to scramble at the end of the night to get out of your costume. And Les Mis was a long show. You weren't getting, they've changed it, but back then it came down at 20 to 11. Okay. So of course, you were tearing off the makeup. Well, most of the time you didn't even bother. You had bits of dirt that you scraped off, getting on your clothes, out the stage door, running down to train stations. That was pretty much for everybody. Unless it was like a cast change party or somebody's birthday, they might organise something or something like that. But no, it wasn't a lot of partying in the West End back then. It was, you pretty much, it was like going to work. You went in, you did the job, you came home. I started having a relationship with somebody in the show and made the fatal error of getting engaged. And we lived together. And of course, when things like that then don't work out, it's quite painful because you're still working with that person.
In the same show?
In the same show, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't equipped to deal with that kind of thing. As I say, I'd been very naive. I didn't have any relationships growing up. Like my first relationships were when I went to London, so I didn't have anything to fall back on or to base it on. So, and I was one of those people again, 100% commitment. When I gave my word, that was it. And then I realised that actually is not what it means to other people. So that was a very, very painful time. And of course I had no family. I had nobody to turn to. And I was also quite private, and I knew my parents would worry, so I wouldn't tell them stuff because I'd be afraid my father would be over on the plane making me go home. So I swallowed a lot of pain and grief, I think, from that time, and tried to get on with it as best I could and be proud and not show people how hurt I was. But it didn't do me any good emotionally or mentally or physically, I would say. So yeah, that scarred me a bit. And kind of moving forward, I then was lucky enough to get into Cats pretty much straight away after Les Mis, and I had such an incredible time in that show. But the whole relationship breakup was going on at the time, and the person that my ex-fiance had left me for was now a big star.
Okay.
So it was quite,
High profile, I guess.
profile. And they were at all the functions together, and you were smiling because you didn't want to look like you were not coping very well. Yeah, it was very, when I look back now, it was I don't know how I got through it, but I did. But it took its toll vocally, and I had serious vocal problems then, caused by emotional trauma, I think is what it was called.
And I noticed a couple of times you've mentioned protecting your parents from, say, bad news or from upset, or being at functions and trying to look like, everything is okay. Do you think there's a lot of pressure on people who take that chance and stick their neck out and maybe leave Ireland and go to London, or to show that they're really successful all the time, and maybe hide any maybe fleeting pieces of time where they aren't successful?
I think so. Because you see it as failure, and you've failed, and you now have to come home because you can't survive, or you've had your heart broken, or it hasn't worked out for you. And Ash, or, when you get that begrudgery voice going on in your head that everybody be judging you, sure, they didn't make it, or whatever it is, and it's so wrong, because it is so tough. And I look back now, and I don't know even how I managed to get there. I think I was very lucky in that I had enough talent and was good enough at singing, acting and dancing at a time when that whole triple threat hadn't really arrived. That was coming. But I got in on the end of the era when you had your singers, and you had your dancers, and you had your actors. You weren't expected to do it all. But that's massively changed now. And I know when I talk to any friends I still have back from those shows, we all say, God, we wouldn't have a hope making it now.
Really?
I think the standard's incredible.
Okay.
The competition is like anybody who gets into a show now. And you have to have neck, and you have to have drive, and you have to be a business person. You have to know how to sell yourself, because that is what it's about. It's so cutthroat, and you're not prepared for that. You're not prepared for that side of it. I think now maybe in drama schools they are, but I wasn't. Okay. I had no understanding of what that was, and it was only when I was in Cats, and I was very lucky to do Stephen Sondheim had come over. He was the first professor at Oxford University, again money put in by Cameron McIntosh and Lloyd Webber, for a new musical theatre composers degree. So for young, lyricists and whatever, to help them. And he was the visiting professor, and it was the end of the year show. And I was lucky enough to be asked to, with the ex-boyfriend and various other people, to be in, to workshop these musicals. And I remember looking, there was an amazing, I won't say her name, but she's still in the business, and she is an incredible talent. She's a fabulous person, but by God, does she know how to work the room.
Okay.
And I remember looking at her. This was at the party afterwards. And I remember she had this red, tight dress on. She had a fabulous figure. She was in Cats with me. And beautiful smile. And my God, she talked to everybody. And everybody was in love with her by the time she'd finished talking to them. Male, female, whatever. And I remember just going, how does she do that? I didn't know what it was. I just knew I recognised something that I didn't have, that I would feel self-conscious or didn't have that allure or that sexuality. I hadn't figured out what that was at that point. But I remember just being in awe of her. And, I'm not saying it's because of that, but it didn't do her any harm. And her trajectory went way up. You know, I'm sure she didn't do anything. I'm not saying that, but she gave the promise of something.
Okay.
You had to be able to do that. You had to give the promise of something.
Charm, charisma.
Exactly. You might never have had to deliver on it. But, you know, I definitely had some experiences, you know, back in those days where, you know, there was some really not good stuff happening, you know, backstage, and pressure was put on you. And, you know, for want of a better word, the old casting couch,
Right.
you know, that like the people would be up in prison now for the kind of stuff that you witnessed or whatever, you know. But, and it wasn't just girls, it was boys as well, particularly young gay men.
People there to take advantage of them. Okay.
Absolutely. You had to be able to withstand that, and you had to have the end in sight. What is it you want to achieve? And you almost could tell the people who had that and who hadn't got that. And the people then who then either chose to get out of it because they weren't able to handle that, or you just were lucky, or you just knew the right people. I don't know. It was all those kind of things. But that was a real coming of age moment for me. I think I was 24. There's all these really powerful people, and I'm just scared of them all.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
rather than being able to, hello, how are, I just couldn't do it. I
Okay.
could do it now.
Okay. Yes.
Couldn't do it then.
Okay. So this workshop you worked on,
Yeah.
that took place after Cats.
During Cats.
During
we were
Cats.
given, we still had to turn up every night to our shows, but we had to go during the day to learn. It was 6 musicals, and it was a 20-minute excerpt from each musical. So I was in 3 of them, and in one of them I had to play opposite the ex-boyfriend. We had to play lovers. And I remember that was really hard, because the person who he was with, even though she wasn't in these workshops, she was starring in a West End show, she would turn up and she would sit in his knee, and they'd all be laughing and joking, and people would be looking at me to go, how's she reacting to that? And I'd just be laughing and joking as well, because
And pretending.
I'm pretending that, you know, it was a seminal moment, that, because what happened after that was, you know, I held it all together, but I had this pain in my throat that went on for a year. Now, of course, I've figured out it was, you know, vocal dystonia and all these things from the not crying. When you basically, you shut that as off, you know, that
The kind of spasmodic
yes,
dysphonia thing.
yeah, dysphonia,
Yes,
where you
yes.
put that emotion in there and it doesn't go any further. I put all the muscles and all those vocal folds into huge stress. So I then, while I was in Cats, and Cats, I loved the part I had in Cats, and it was a great show to do. And I
What part
really,
did you have in Cats?
so I was Jelly Lorm and Griddlebone in that, so it's the opera cat. But I also then understudied Grisabella, played by Rhea Jones at the time, and Anna Jane Casey was in Cats with me at the time as well, and Janie D, and, you know, Anna Jane was only, 17 then, 16 maybe, really young. And Anna Jane is now still, obviously, and Janie, both still out there doing it. But it was just a great fun show. After Les Mis, it was a piece of fluff, and you enjoy going on
And
stage.
does it change things? Does the material of the show and the vibe and the mood of the show change your experience?
Totally. So I think Les Mis is an audience show. The audience love Les Mis, but by God, it's a grind to be on stage, dying 8 shows a week. Cats, the audience probably sit there going, I haven't a clue what's going on. Great dance number. What's the show about? I don't know. Do you know what the show is about? Like,
But you were having a ball. A jellicle ball, if you will.
A jellicle ball. We knew what the show was about. But the way it's written, etc., I totally get it. But because it was fun and it was uplifting, and it was, you know, it was so easy to do 8 shows a week. And while I was in Cats then, I auditioned for The King and I, and I got the part of Tup Tim, who is of course now he wouldn't be cast as Tup Tim in a million years, but back then, sure, it was grand. So Susan Hampshire played Mrs. Anna, who was a big star at the time. I started the first day of rehearsals, and I went into my big song, and got into the middle range of my voice to find nothing there.
Okay.
And everybody looking at you. Should we try that again, Grace? Of course. Same thing happened. Oh my God. And yeah, my whole voice had broken down in the somewhere where I was doing Cats, but because I'd been doing Cats and it was grand, it didn't come out in that, but I'd had 3 weeks off, start rehearsals with The King and I, no voice. Yeah. So, but I couldn't get out of my contract, so I had to do 9 months on tour with The King and I.
Okay.
With a voice that didn't work properly. Oh my God. It was the most horrendous time of my life. And that started me then on the vocal rehabilitation journey. And I'd say it was probably the closest I'd say I would have come to a nervous breakdown, and definitely to being almost like a OCD ritualistic drinker. Because to get on stage, I had to, I used to down 2 glasses of vodka to get on stage, get through the show, and then I wouldn't touch another drop of alcohol till the next day at about 6 o'clock, when I would do the same thing. And that went on for 9 months, having a nervous breakdown.
The nervous breakdown was caused by the vocal problems, the touring, the private life.
Everything.
Everything.
The whole lot, and just the inability to be able to cope with it all, you know, but the loss of my voice. Here you are, japers, you've made it. There was huge auditions for Top Tim, and everybody who played Cosette, everybody who played Christine, everybody was auditioning. It was a big thing, and it was coming into the West End, but it was out of tour first, and I got it. Mm-hmm. Big moment. Dun, da, 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 da. No voice. Yeah. And who am I? Who am I now? If I can't sing, who am I? Who am I? 24, 25, and my career kind of was literally coming to an end.
Did the audience know you were having terrible vocal problems, or did you just dig deep and do whatever you had to do to make it work?
Yeah, bit of that. And I started, Susan Hampshire was so lovely to me, and she, being a woman of a certain age, kind of took me under her wing. And my agent knew a fabulous singing teacher. There was Joy Mammon, and there was a man called Peter Harrison. And I started going to them, and they were the ones who said to me, your voice isn't really, this isn't so much about this. I went to a specialist in Blackheath, stuck the camera down me throat and went, absolutely nothing wrong with your vocal cords whatsoever. It's everything around there. Gone. All the musculature, you've put everything into, and I didn't understand anatomy of vocal cords, right? And he said, but basically they can't vibrate properly because every other muscle here is in such spasm. So he said, I think you have to go to vocal osteopathy, and I would advise you to start therapy.
Okay.
So that's what started me.
So work on the physical and work on the mental.
On the emotional.
On the emotional.
So that opened me up to that whole world of to get in touch with myself and changed me forever. So yeah, but so I managed to get out of my contract when they realised that this was not just me making it up and being dramatic and oh my God, my voice and whatever. But they managed to get me to a point where I could cheat my way through it. Right. And I mean cheat. It was not my voice. And I hated having to do it, but I just managed to get through it. And I got out of my contract just before the show went into the West End. Yeah. Okay. And I did not work again for 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. And what did you do during those 2 years? You worked on yourself?
I went to singing lessons every day. I had to have 20-minute to 30-minute vocal rehabilitation every day. And I was one of the first people who broke the barrier, a boundary between being on stage and working backstage. So I rolled up to Les Mis, knocked on the stage door, went up to the wardrobe department, said, any jobs as a dresser. So I worked as a dresser.
On a show that you had been in.
That I had been in.
And was that good enough for you at the time, or was that heartbreaking? Or
both. Both. I became obsessed almost about getting my voice back. That's all I could think about. I would do whatever it took. Right. So I took whatever job I could get. And for 2 years I worked on that. I started therapy, and it actually dressed and paid really well. That was what was interesting, because the whole business had changed, Kieran. We had gone from being full equity cards, Maggie Thatcher come in, she started shutting all the theatres down. Equity became an open shop, so anybody could be on a West End stage. You didn't have to have any training, any nothing, because we're now into the 90s. All the reality shows had started. And it became very difficult to keep shows open. So you had to have stars. You had to have people that people recognised off the telly in the show.
Even if they weren't as good as the people standing behind them.
The business completely changed there. And that's when I could have absolutely come home again at that point.
But you didn't. You were a dresser in Les Mis and you were working on your voice.
So then I got my voice back to the point that I could audition and sing again, but never to the same extent. And I lost something. I lost a joy. It became now a fear. Okay. Oh God, is my voice going to get through this? Hopefully I get a part that where I can cheat sing this rather than actually sing this, and all those things that any singer will know about. That fear that goes in, and the joy and the spontaneity kind of goes out. I had also, while I was studying my voice, I started going to the Actor Centre in those 2 years and taking acting classes and Stanislavski method and, introduction to Shakespeare and all those kind of things. And I started to try and say, well, look, if I can't sing, I can still act, hopefully. And I started doing fringe shows. So these would be off West End. So I did Uncle Vanya. That was my first kind of big play I'd done with, funny enough, David Delve, who had played Thénardier in Les Mis when I'd been in Les Mis, played Uncle Vanya. Judy Bowker, who was a big star, she was in Black Beauty. It was her little theatre company with her husband Harry. They had, both were stars back in the kind of 60s. So this was their theatre company. So you got expenses, but you didn't get paid. But, it was still like a proper job. So I played Sonia in that, loved it. And then they offered me Peggy and Mike in Playboy of the Western World. So I did that for them straight away afterwards. And then my voice was good enough that I got into Music Theatre London's production of La Cenerentola, Cinderella, the opera, Rossini opera, classical. So, of course, my voice was quite good. I found that I could sing classically, but not necessarily musical theatre-y.
Okay.
And we went to Vienna. I had the most amazing time. We toured all over England. And then I got straight from that into a production of Ken Hill's Phantom of the Opera. Did you know there was 2 Phantom of the Operas?
I had no idea there were 2 Phantom of the Operas.
There's 2 Phantom of the Operas. So Ken Hill had written Phantom of the Opera, the musical, before. Andrew Lloyd Webber had written Phantom of the Opera, the musical. Exact same. But he was using, same story, but he was using opera. So we went to Japan and the Philippines with that.
With an alternative, or I'll call it an alternative version
of Phantom of the Opera.
You toured the world with that.
Yes. Eye-opener. It was sort of like I was more mature. I'd come through therapy. I had a better handle on who I was. I started to enjoy performing again and believe maybe that things could work out for me again. So again, this is the business of acting and the reality of acting. So there's me coming back in 1994 thinking I've been in the West End and I've been in The Charmer, and I'd done The Heat of the Day, a film. I'd only a tiny part in it for Granada, with Patricia Hodge and Michael Gambon were starring in it. I think I had done Peak Practice. Yes, I had. And I came back to Ireland in 94 thinking I want to be an actress. So I'm going to go home to Ireland and I'm going to see, can I make it? And I wrote to every theatre company from the Abbey, the Gate, Project Art Centre, Red Kettle, Comedy Town in Limerick, Team Theatre, TIE, you name it. And I did not get one audition.
Wow.
Not one. It was just like, no, didn't even get letters back, didn't get anything, and I was still old-fashioned. That was before mobile phones and all these things that we have nowadays. You actually wrote to theatre companies asking them for an audition or things like that. But no, what I realised was actually having been in the West End actually went against me.
Is there a snobbery against musical theatre performers?
In Ireland and England, yes. Not on Broadway.
Okay.
You look at Broadway, it's incredible. If you're a Broadway star, next thing you know, they're in a film in Hollywood or they're leading a TV series. And They absolutely accept that you can be really good at acting and singing and dancing. Full stop. Not in the West End. No, you could go from acting into West End, into musicals, but you could never go from being musical theatre into acting unless you were incredibly lucky.
Because they thought maybe you weren't a true bona fide actor, because really you were just mugging, pulling faces and
Absolutely.
dancing around the stage.
And dancing around the stage. There are very few who've done that. Very few. But yeah, so that was an eye-opener. So I ended up sleeping on the floor of my brother's house in Phibsborough. So I had a roll-up mattress on the sitting room floor. And I remember now I was 29 at the time, or 28, and thinking, oh God, right, so this is the reality of it here. So I got a job. I got on the FOSS scheme. And I was helping people find work.
Okay.
So I was helping with interview technique and those kind of things. And I kept in touch with some people I'd been in HMS Pinafore with all those years ago. They told me that Guys and Dolls was coming to the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin the summer of 1995, again with John Kavanagh and Anita Reeves. But Paul Kerrison from Leicester Haymarket was directing it. So I wrote to Paul Kerrison at Leicester Haymarket because I couldn't get an audition. So I had to write the letter to the director in Leicester. He gave me an audition.
So you had to write to London to ask, could you be in something in Ireland? And you got it.
And I got it at the Gaiety Theatre that summer. And because it was a UK kind of and Gaiety Theatre production, it was going back to England. And I went back.
And off you went back
And
again.
off I went back
with
for
Guys and
part
Dolls.
2 of the career with Guys and Dolls. And so Paul Kerrison, actually quite influential in my career, Paul. He saw something in me or whatever it was. So I did Guys and Dolls. Like I wasn't playing a lead part. So one of the Hot Box Girls, and I was Agatha in the Salvation Army. And I understudied not Sarah, but Adelaide, funny enough. So I got to go on for her in Leicester when we were there, and in Edinburgh because it toured. And then he gave me Katie Brown in Calamity Jane with Gemma Craven and Stephen. Oh my God, it'll come to me. He is now in Call the Midwife. He plays the doctor.
Oh yes. Well, we know the doctor.
Yeah, terrible. Sorry. Apologies. And I played Katie Brown, and we went into Sadler's Wells with that show. And he gave me quite a bit of work. I did Playboy of the Western World for him. I did When We Were Married for him. I did, a few things for him. And that took me up to, and I know people will find this hard to believe, that a show that would drive you out of show business was Phantom of the Opera. The other Phantom of the Opera. The West End Lloyd Webber version of Phantom of the Opera. So I auditioned for that and got in, again as Swing. I knew the resident director from Phantom because he had been the resident director on Bless the Bride, and auditioned, whatever, and got in. Oh my God, I thought I was going to die. Like, again, a show from the audience perspective that is amazing, but to be in it is mind-numbingly boring. There is very little for the ensemble to do if you actually look at Phantom of the Opera. Very little. They do Hannibal at the beginning, and then they go, oh, the Phantom, and run off, and they do a bit in the beginning of Act 2, Masquerade, and then they run around the stage going, he's there, and whatever it is, the Phantom of the Opera, and that's it. And like, I had to understudy some of the dancers as well as some of the singers, so that was at least you got on. But the other thing I found very difficult about that show was the people who'd been in it, and again, not casting aspersions on anybody, because everybody does things for their own reasons, but some people had been in it now for 10 years, 15 years, and literally you'd be on stage with them and they'd be chatting. Yeah, I know. And then my daughter went to school. I know exactly. Masquerade. I know, isn't that terrible? And I'd be looking at them going, we're on stage. Like, you can't be having a chat about your daughter's school on stage. Literally turning up, churning it out.
That was not who you were.
No. And then sitting in dressing rooms, suddenly realising that people are talking about, and again, this sounds I don't know, in the end it comes out as it comes out. When you realise something in you is changing, probably from doing therapy, probably from studying acting and all this, when you're sitting in dressing rooms and people are going, yeah, I really like that shade of lipstick, it's lovely. Do you? Yeah, because you can get it up there and like going, oh my God, this is all they're talking about. Yeah. Shades of lipstick.
Banal. Every day.
I think I was just changing. I was growing up. I was in my 30s, began to read, I began to see the world outside me, and I was going, really? Do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? Sit and talk about the colour of lipstick and go on stage and churn out the same thing. Well, not even the same thing, but literally churn it out. And people behind you on the masquerade stairs are talking about where they're going to go in between shows for the cup of tea. Like, these people have paid €150 to see this. I found
So
that.
why did you do the show then? Did you do it because you had to pay the bills?
Yes.
Because you wanted to
Yes.
be an actor, because to keep you going until you got to the thing that might fulfill you? Or did you feel pressure to stay in the business? Or
I think I was at a cusp of change and I didn't know where I was going. It was so hard to get a job at that point. It was so hard to get an audition. It really, you could no longer, you had to absolutely have the right agent. You could not get seen for stuff. And I think when you'd played parts, to go back just being into the back row of the course, but you had to do that. You had to accept that. I had to accept that if I was going to live in London and pay bills, I was going to have to get a steadier job. Because when you went out, even though being on tour with Calamity Jane, it was amazing, the pay wasn't that good. And then you're paying for your rent in every place you go, and and you never get to save money, and then the show comes to an end and you still have to pay the tax bill, and all of those things. So it's such a nomadic and life, and you get to a point where you want to be able to put down roots, and you want to be able to have that calmness in your life, I suppose. And so being in a West End show kind of gave you that, but that was the wrong show to be in for me. For me, it was the wrong show to be in. While I was in that show, I got a call from my agent to say that there was a one-woman kind of show, musical going on in Cork, in the Everyman Theatre, written by these two brothers, Ryan brothers. It was mainly one woman with some smaller characters, and they were looking for people to do it. So lots of Irish singers and people from Ireland and some Irish actresses had auditioned for it. It was called Brooklyn Bridge, and I got it. It was a brilliant show. We ran at the Everyman for 2 weeks. I played 3 parts. I played myself, Muriel's mother, and God. Now, this was in 1999, before computer technology. I had to separately sing and record every single track separately. David Hayes was the musical director. He still talks about it. And they had to play the recording into my ear, and then I'd have to come in with the harmony or the vocal line of the other character that was playing, or answer. Or sometimes I was playing my mother on the phone, so I'd have her coming across on the loudspeaker on stage, and I'd have to get all my lines out at the same before she interjected. This kind. It was it was mammoth. It got a bit of funding, and we were going to go to Dublin, and there was talk then of it going to trying to get in off West End, but it didn't happen.
okay.
And at the same time, while I was doing that, I'd got to do the workshop of The Beautiful Game, the new Lloyd Webber musical based on football in Ireland. And I walked into the rehearsal room to realise that I was the oldest one in the cast. That was a significant thing when you realise, when did I become the oldest person? Because, of course, they were all teenagers. Josephine Walker was in it. One of the young lads who played Gavroche was now one of the leads. David Shannon played the lead. And there was nothing for the women to do. We were the mammies or whatever it is. It was all about the young lads. And I remember going, oh, no. And then it was going into the West End, and my agent said, go on, Grace, this would be a good job for you. I went, I can't do it. I just knew I'd go off. I always said to myself, if I find myself standing there looking at other people enviously because they are playing the lead part and I'm not, and then saying, well, in my day, of course, if I find that coming out of my mouth, get out. I'd always said that to myself, and I started to have those thoughts. oh, it wasn't like this when we were back in 1986. And that's when I knew I have to get out. I either accept my lot, stay in the shows in the back row of the chorus and hope that it happens, or get out. Walk away, let it go. Let it go.
And that's what you did.
And that's what I did.
So then you came back to Ireland.
No. So I decided to give up acting. I'd become very interested, maybe because I'd been going to therapy and I was trying to figure out why I'd lost my voice and all of those kind of things. And I decided I was drawn to sort of the health and wellness, which lots of actors are anyway. So I did my last professional show in the March of 2001, and I started a BSc Honours in Health Sciences and Nutritional Therapy in September 2001 at the University of Westminster.
A big change.
Huge.
From the girl who wasn't that interested in her leaving cert.
Yeah.
You're now in college.
Yeah. The relief, that's all I can describe to you. The relief of letting go of show business. And I mean, I let go of it all. It wasn't that I cut off friends, but I didn't. A lot of my, say, associates I would have had in show business, I just kind of let it go. My close friends I kept. But there was this cathartic feeling of all of the hunger, the drive, the pain, the frustration, the drama, professional envy, the whatever it is, literally to let it off the back, let it go, say goodbye to it and start afresh, recreate myself in a completely different world. And to suddenly find yourself in a place where you're totally not judged on how well you can sing, what you look like, how good you can dance, etc., and to be in a much more, I suppose, safe environment in some respects, but much more orderly, much more kind of like, okay, here's this essay to write. You go away, you research it, you put in your work, and you pretty much get back the mark that kind of you think you're going to get. But not only that, there's a whole set of criteria. They give you a feedback sheet with exactly how you scored and everything, rather than like you go and you did this most amazing audition, you researched the part, you turned up kind of looking like the part, you really felt you nailed it, and you never hear anything ever again. And you're just never get any feedback, you never know why. You find out maybe later that somebody's wife, girlfriend, mother, daughter, whatever, black, might have got it, or they were starring in something on the television. But that was just the relief of it. The relief of going, oh my God, and that I have a brain and that I'm really enjoying this and that it's giving me something. It's not all going the other way. It's going.
You're getting out of it what you're putting into it.
Yes. So what drew me back to Ireland was, to a certain extent, that and things in my personal life. I had a marriage. Of course, I was married to an actor musician, and that was not going so well. And the move to Ireland was kind of trying to restart again. Again, how these things happen. A friend of mine who was on the course of me happened to be at the annual general meeting of the British Association of Nutritional Therapists, and there was a man there from Ireland who was running a college in Bray and was desperately looking for lecturers. And she happened to say, oh, I have a friend who's going back to Ireland, who's a nutritional therapist, gave my number, and I graduated in October 2004, and I was lecturing for the Irish Institute of Nutrition and Health in December 2004.
A total change.
Total change. And I did not sing a note, not a note, for the next, for 10 years.
Completely cut it out of your life. A forgotten past.
Absolutely.
In many ways. There was another part of your academic journey where maybe you did bring in more of your background in theatre and acting and everything else. Tell us about that.
I did have a moment I remember distinctly, it was a Saturday night and there was a huge big pile of homework marking, and I was going in to lecture the next day, and it was Strictly Come Dancing, and they had, it was the show's spectacular weekend, and I was sitting there, marking my homework. It was all science stuff. And there was the girls who were in Mamma Mia came out on stage to sing, a bit of a medley during the Strictly Come Dancing thing, and one of the girls I knew, Helen Hobson, she was in it, and they were just singing Waterloo and Mamma Mia. And in that moment, I missed it. I suddenly went, oh my God, I miss performing. They look so like, Mamma Mia, here I go again. And there was me going, oh yes, so the hydrogen carrier here is looks like, okay, maybe I've just gone a bit too far down this road and not have cut off this side of myself. So I was at, again, that crossroads. What do I do? And I was like, no, I'm not putting myself back into show business. I'm not going there. I'm not allowing myself to be that vulnerable again. And yet, how do I acknowledge this creative side of myself that I've squashed over here? So with a couple of glasses of wine inside me, I started to research, and I found that they were doing an MA in drama therapy at Maynooth. And I was like, oh, drama therapy, how interesting. That reawakened my love and my passion for my creative spirit. Because I went through, as well as doing that course from an academic perspective, I went through 2 years of therapy as I was doing the course. And I healed a lot of the old wounds and forgave myself. Drama therapy is all about drama as therapy, but embodiment, role, projection, distance. It was the perfect almost thing for me to do, because it gave me this huge insight into playwriting, into plays, into the subtext, into what drives a character to do things. It was fascinating, but it was so healing on every single layer there. And I met, a few people in there who knew, who were in the amateur theatre world, etc., etc., etc. And that was my introduction back. One of the people there said, oh, they're doing a concert at the ESB, are trying to set up their musical society again. And I have a friend who's kind of in it and on the committee, and sure, you used to be a singer. Do you want to go along for the audition? And, a few people were going. I said, sure, I'll go along. Directed by Christine Scarry. My heart, I thought, was going to jump out of my chest with nerves. But that was my first foray back into performing again. And it was from there that I found out about Sweeney Todd in Malahide
Musical Society. How many years later?
Yeah.
Back to School Isa.
Back to School Isa, I think it was August 2011, was it, Kieran?
It was.
It was August 2011. And what do you say to people? So have you done anything before? Yeah, well, let me tell you, I was on the West End stage. Again, the fear of being judged. Oh, so she's coming in here thinking she's going to be showing off and better than all of us, and I've been on the West End, That's not me.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't. I was trying to not tell the truth, but I didn't know how to tell the truth without being people thinking I was full of myself or something like that.
As a person who has directed shows in the past, I will say to you that we would much appreciate if you would tell us all of the things that you have done when you come into an audition room. So you did Sweeney Todd. We did Sweeney Todd.
We did Sweeney Todd, Kieran.
And you were the beggar woman.
I was the beggar woman.
And I have seen that on Broadway, and I've seen it in many other places, and I've watched every video that's ever existed, and I've never seen a better beggar woman than you. You were absolutely fabulous. You brought in some of your programs to a rehearsal one time, and you were saying, there's me and Cats and there's me, and we couldn't believe that this person had come to be in the show. And you've gone on to do other shows within, I suppose, what we might call AIMS and the amateur musical theatre scene.
I did Sound of Music for Festival Productions, even though that's not a name show at the National Concert Hall. And I did...
You were Mother Abbess in that.
In the Mother Abbess, yes. I went through, I did a few plays for Teachers Musical Society. One play one that you wrote, which will always be very special to us, Every Rose. But a play that I think gave me an insight to myself and kind of probably started me on the next stage, which was Sister Mary Ignatius.
Another nun.
Another nun, a psychotic nun, but what a part.
Incredible.
Probably from doing the drama therapy, I embraced all that ugliness, madness, cruelty. I wasn't afraid of it, you know. That's what I think the drama therapy course taught me. Don't be afraid of these parts of yourself. Go into them, have a look in there and see where in the character can you be that person. But yeah, so, and then I did curtains in Rush Musical Society.
Fell in love.
Fell in love with my lovely husband.
Got married.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Got divorced from the first one, obviously. That one.
Yes.
Sure, look, you learn from all these things, and you can't have. I think you can have regrets to a certain extent, but it's life, and it's how you cope with it, you know. And and I don't think I would have been ready or able for the marriage I have now unless I'd gone through all those things, because I grew up and I realised what love is. Love isn't all drama and not knowing who you are and not knowing whether this person loves you or any of those things, because it all becomes just so heightened. It's actually this beautiful place of, you know, where you're the trust you have for this person and they would do anything for you. And I was so lucky. I get emotional now talking about my husband, but he saved me in lots of ways. Yeah.
We love John. He's the best.
John, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, out of the blue, I got a phone call from a very old friend of mine called Kinirons Mooney to ask me to audition for You're in Town. Again, an amazing part. Penelope Pennywise. The darkness, the fun, the
comedy,
the
craziness.
Yeah. And then, you know, a few little concerts here and there that you and I have done together and bits of plays until Sweeney Todd again.
And not the beggar woman this time, but Mrs. Lovett.
Mrs. Lovett. And again, the first time I'd really wanted something or allowed myself to want something, really allowed myself to want something. And to get it was incredible, you know, to actually audition, and not because I don't know about you, Karen, but I hate auditions. I'm shite at them. I can't let myself go enough. I'm too self-aware. I'm too...
I think we get it into our heads that the stakes are really high, and we sort of get in our own way a little
hugely.
bit.
I was one of those actors, if I got into something, I would prove myself in there. And a lot of directors I worked with, they would ask me back. So that was proof to me. I worked with them quite a few times. But to actually get in the door and for them to take a chance with you, I just would fuck it up. Really sorry for the language, but yeah, be too nervous, too uptight, too not myself, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So now you are surrounded by family who you provide great care for, and you've got a fabulous husband who is just so amazing. You have a day job.
I have a day job.
And you are probably still at the top of your game in terms of the bits of theatre that you do, albeit part-time, temporary, sporadic. Do you think maybe you've hit the balance? Or would you like it to be different?
I would definitely like to be able to do more. Yeah. I think there is an imbalance there now. But I understand why, and I have to make a peace with that. Even though I have said to myself, you know, turning 60, it's a big milestone. I want to be able to say yes to things. Life is so short, really. And being with somebody who's getting older and seeing, you know, all the things that come with aging and the loss of confidence and the loss of ability and things like that. I'm aware, even though I'm not old, I'm aware that that period of time where you have strength, courage, ability, health, it's not that long ahead. You know what I mean? There's way more behind me now than there is ahead. I don't want to say no to things, and yet I know I'm trapped a little bit in that. Oh, how am I going to manage this, etc., etc. So I'm going to have to figure that out because I think I owe it to myself, and I owe it to the talent that I was given and the chances I have been given in my life. And so many people never get those chances and, you know, don't get the opportunity for whatever reason. That I think it's really important if you have an ability to create something, to create a Mrs. Lovett. even though she's been done many, many times before. But the privilege of that, the privilege of being allowed to create and come up with and play and get it wrong and do all those things, and to be in a environment with fabulous people who are all trying to do the same thing, and never even think about doing it. We are
And you
privileged.
still love it.
I do. I always say to John, if I won the lottery, it'd be that thing. I'd set up a theatre company and I would give auditions to anybody who asked for one. Doesn't matter what they do. You're getting an audition, come in and try and make it pleasant and safe for everybody, and that
Because you still have that drive to be creative.
hugely, and I think, please God, we'll never leave. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we've seen the last of you just yet.
You have to think to yourself, like, what roles are there for the older woman now? Particularly musical theatre. Not many.
Well, if there are, I think you should play them.
Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you so much for being part of this.
Oh, you're so
I have
welcome.
loved listening to your story.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for sharing so openly and honestly about it.
Thank you.